Hey folks, welcome back to Gender Justice with Silver Linings. I'm Mariah Silver. I'm excited to have you with us today. We're going to be talking about 3 different topics, which is exciting, but a few housekeeping things before we get started. So we have really exciting interviews coming up. We're going to be talking with Victim Rights Law Center about their lawsuit against the Trump administration and Betsy DeVos for rollbacks in Title IX guidance on sexual assault on college campuses. And then we have a really exciting interview. I'm going to be taking you to the Caribbean. We are going to the island of St. Lucia. We're going to be talking with the St. Lucia Crisis Center about domestic and sexual violence on the island and what that looks like there. But let's dive into what we have today. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about, I wanted to highlight particularly because it kind of got lost in the media this week. There's been a lot of talk about passing the budget this week, about the Olympics, about the stock market, and it kind of got caught up in that news. So this week on Tuesday, the House passed unanimously a piece of legislation that addresses sexual assault and sexual harassment in the workplace being Congress. This is really exciting news because the system that was in place previously was extremely archaic and creating some very serious problems for those who are trying to report incidences of sexual assault or sexual harassment against members of Congress. So, before, what we had seen was all based on the Congressional Accountability Act of 1995. That's how old this legislation is, and it created the process by which you can report discrimination, harassment by members of Congress or others. So that's how that process was set up. Now, previously under this process, it allowed certain things to happen that have recently come to light. One of the biggest was that we realized members of Congress were using taxpayer dollars to pay off these claims against them of sexual harassment. One of the more prominent ones recently was Representative John Conyers, who we saw resigned because of this issue. He had paid off a staff member who had accused him of sexual harassment. So that was a really big point. Another big point is that previously, before you could even file a complaint, you had to go through mediation and counseling. Mediation and counseling before you could even file a complaint. So that created a significant barrier for people who were trying to report these incidences. So what does this new legislation do? This new legislation first gets rid of this nonsense where Congress members are using taxpayer dollars to pay off sexual harassment and sexual assault claims against them. They are required to immediately in 90 days pay back the Treasury any sum of money that they've been using to pay off these claims with taxpayer dollars, meaning no more are we going to have our taxpayer dollars go toward paying off claims of sexual harassment against our representatives. That's huge. They also, in this legislation, got rid of the mandate that they go through mediation and counseling. So that barrier has been dissolved, which is incredible. One of the last barriers that was taken down and created in this newest legislation is previously, members of Congress were always given attorneys to represent them in matters such as this, but individuals coming forward to report claims were given no advocates, no attorney, no real representation. So we're leveling the playing field. So now the new legislation says that if someone's coming forward to report sexual harassment, sexual assault in the workplace, they're required to have an advocate or attorney represent them. So this is a really huge step in trying to level this process and get rid of some of the barriers and the lack of transparency that existed in the past. So this legislation passed the House, but we don't know what's going to happen in the Senate. We're going to have to hang tight and see. There have been some criticisms of the legislation regarding the transparency of it and how they've actually structured the reporting process. So again, let's stay tuned, keep our eyes and ears open for what's happening with this legislation. Even more exciting was, in addition to this, the House passed a resolution requiring that all staff offices adopt sexual harassment policies and anti-discrimination policies. Now, it's pretty astounding to think that these never existed before, but I guess we can say better late than never. So now these members of the House are required to have these policies put in place. Now, we hope they actually implement these policies, because you can have the prettiest policy in the world, but if you don't implement it, it does not mean a whole lot. Now, what's great about this is it's a resolution. It's not going to the Senate. It's something that controls processes in the House. So it's done and over with, signed, sealed, delivered. So that's really good news. The next thing I wanted to talk about, we're going to shift gears. We're heading to Cornell. Cornell has been in the news lately. Cornell had a fraternity on campus that was recently suspended for 2 years because they had their incoming members participate in something called a pig roast. Brace yourselves. So the pig roast was where the students in the frat got points for having sex with other students, and if the person they had sex with weighed more or was heavier, they got extra points. Now, this is pretty despicable and pretty cringeworthy, and really makes me question, how are we raising our young boys? Are we reaching them early enough in school, via their parents, whatever it may be, to talk to them about respect, healthy relationships, gender equality, issues that put them in a better position to be meaningful contributors to campus communities, to our society, and in the way that they treat other human beings. Now, the good thing about this news is that Cornell actually acted very quickly to address this issue. They immediately investigated as I said, this particular fraternity was put on probation for 2 years. All of the fraternity members are being reviewed in terms of their actual membership. And all the fraternity members are required now. They're going through bystander training, bystander intervention trainings. They're going through sexual harassment trainings, all types of trainings to really try and address some of the negative cultural views that they've clearly brought to campus with them. So I hope this sparks some conversation and continues the conversation around toxic cultures that fraternities can create on campus, that in many respects create hostile environments for women and other underrepresented groups on campus via these hypersexualized, coercive, or even practices that are based in deep rape culture that come out of fraternities, especially when they have new students coming in and pledging to new fraternities and they're engaging in those activities. So I hope we can continue that conversation and try and break some of that down to create healthier school environments. Now, the last quick thing I wanted to touch on was West Point. So West Point this week reported that they had, in the past year, 50 reports of sexual assault at West Point, a figure that had actually doubled since the previous year. Now, a lot of people like to jump to the conclusion that, oh my gosh, does this mean that there is more sexual assault happening at West Point, that more people are being assaulted? Slow down. So what I like to caution people is that this really needs to be viewed through the lens of reporting. A reporting process, whether it's to the police, campus authorities, in a workplace, it needs to be approachable and accessible. If it's approachable and accessible, then we're going to see more people reporting, which is a good thing, not a bad thing. So with West Point, we should actually look at this situation that West Point is starting to create an environment where more women can come forward and report incidences of sexual assault. Now, hopefully they can keep that going, because knowing the statistics on sexual assault, 50 women sounds low to me. So hopefully they can keep up some of the good work that they seem to have been doing in getting people to report and talk about these issues, and sort of breaking some of the silence. So let's end with a silver lining. My silver lining this week is structural change. So we've seen #MeToo, and a lot of us have been wondering, me in particular, what's next? What now? Hashtag what now? We have heard these stories. You have gone to your community members, you have gone to your members of Congress, you've written your hashtag Me Too story, you've shared your stories with friends and family members. Members of Congress have been taking survivors to the State of the Union. This movement, now we're starting to see some real change. With the House taking up these pieces of legislation, they're listening to you, they're listening to us, they're listening to a community of people, a nation that's saying enough is enough. And I think that that is certainly a silver lining. So thank you for being here with me today. I hope to see you in the upcoming weeks when we have some great interviews. See you later.